Tastes like wine. Hello fellow fans of anime. As you probably are aware if you're watching this video, the spring 2019 anime season has more or less come to a close. A lot of the shows that are currently on for that season are wrapping up in the next week or so. And so let's talk about the best ones, per my opinion, with a glass or 3 or 4 of wine. Now I did watch about like 20 shows this season, which is a lot, which I started realizing about halfway through when I was having trouble keeping up with all of them. So I will populate the screen roughly right now with everything that I actually watched this season, just so you have a general idea, and so you know that if something that you preferred didn't make my main list, yeah, I probably watched it, and that's why it wasn't in this list. Also, just for the record, in case you're curious, anything that's like a 2-core anime or like on its 2nd season or something of that sort, or just like an ongoing show, so anything like Shield Hero or Boruto or Dororo or things like that, they're not going to be included in here because they started in the winter season, and so I'm not including them. I only include new stuff that started first episode in the spring season, so know that. So to start off this list, let's dive into probably one of the more risque anime of the season. That is Aon Cant Study. This is a show about a young girl in high school who has a father who writes very sexually explicit, I guess, novels. And so as a result, she is very knowledgeable about sex and things of that sort, and so it becomes just something that she assumes that all men are thinking of, and so she starts out the show very hostile towards the male demographic. And of course we have one guy who ends up falling for her, and for the majority of the show it becomes kind of a tug and pull of him trying to woo her while she's trying to just assume that he's going to try to just get in her pants as soon as possible while he continues to defy those expectations. And it becomes a very, very heartwarming show, a very comical show at the same time. It's only like 10 to 12 minutes per episode, and it has easily one of the best openings of the season, in my opinion. And so I really enjoyed it. It actually has a good, solid narrative. You can see character progression happen for Ayo-chan throughout the course of the entirety of the show, and so I enjoyed seeing that, and I thought that had a relatively satisfying finale in its last episode, assuming this doesn't get a 2nd season down the line. Next on this list is a musical anime, and not like the singing and dancing stage production stuff. It's more of high school students playing the koto, and this is an anime called Sounds of Life, because I don't remember the Japanese name. But this was a show on both Funimation, and I watched it on Hulu, and it focuses again on a group of high school students who are all very interested for a variety of reasons in the musical instrument, the koto, which is a old Japanese instrument, string instrument. And this was another show which kind of caught my interest. I am a past musician myself, and so that, or anything that deals with instruments and music in that sense, is something which really draws me in. For example, Your Lie in April caught my attention at first because of the piano and the violin stuff that was going on between the 2 main characters, and then the gut-wrenching, heart-stopping story kind of kept me going as my body dried out from the tears that were going down my eyes. The Sounds of Life, thankfully, is not quite as depressing as Your Lie in April is. Like I said, it focuses on a group of high school students who are all interested in the koto. They join a club for a variety of reasons, mainly focusing on I think, 2nd or 3rd year student who was in the club before, didn't have a really great team. He had a good experience, but his fellow players weren't that talented, and so he ends up recruiting a variety of different people for the club. One person's a prodigy, one person's kind of an outcast, and a variety of other people associated with them. And you get to just see them develop their skills over the course of the 13 episodes, and it doesn't seem like it's leading to a super satisfying finale, because the finale is next week from when I'm filming this, and it seems like there's a lot more to tell. So as far as I know, it's just a 1-season anime and 13 episodes, but it feels like there should be a lot more to this show and a lot more development and just more past where it seems to be leading off on, unless it's just going to have a super unsatisfying conclusion, which it might, I don't know. But it was, regardless, one of my favorite shows of the season, and one which I consistently kept going back to each Saturday that it debuted because I was curious to see what happened next. I do this in college. Next on this list focuses on a very young and shy middle school girl named Hitori Bachi, and this is a show which I instantly fell in love with just because of how lovable and innocent and pure this young girl named Bachi is. She is a very, very shy, introverted child, and her best friend from elementary school essentially tells her at the end of elementary school, because they're going to two different middle schools, that she's going to stop being friends with you and stop talking to you until you make friends with your entire class, which is basically an impossible task, in my experience at least. But Bochi, being a very determined person, despite her shyness, eagerly tries to make friends with a variety of different students, and by the end of the show she does end up forming her own group of friends, which is a very neat thing to see compared to where she was at the beginning of the show. And she still has her little quirks about her. She faints every time somebody actually agrees to be her friend, regardless of if it's a person or a smartphone. And she's still very, very clueless about kind of everyday commonplace things. It just makes for a very funny show. I laughed in almost every single episode at least one time. And it just was a very fun time. It's a fun show. It doesn't have a huge amount of stakes. It's a very relaxing show. It moves very fast because they go through their first year of middle school within the 12 episode run that the show has. And so I kind of wish that it had maybe slowed down a tad bit, or maybe just had a longer run in general, because I feel like there's more stories to tell. But I don't know. It was a show which, again, like I said, I really enjoyed. It was one of the 3 Friday shows which I raced home to watch from work every Friday. So, yeah, Hitori Bachi, I'll miss you. And go watch it if you haven't. Next show on this list is the only pure isekai show from the season, which I watched and enjoyed, and that is Wise Man's Grandchild. It kind of has the standard isekai setup. We have a guy from our reality and our world who ends up dying in a tragic accident, and as a result he is reborn into this new fantasy world of magic and swords and demons and all that fun stuff. And of course he has all of his memories from his past life in regards to like science and how the world works in regards to nature and all that stuff that we learn in middle school and high school. And so as a result, when he grows up and he starts to learn magic from his grandfather, who ends up being like the greatest sorcerer ever or whatever, he is able to do these really incredible magic power casting things. So he's able to just visualize magic in a way that's never been done before and come up with devices like a telephone system essentially, or a communication system, or like a one-way teleportation thing. So he creates like a doorway out of nowhere which can lead him to anywhere that he's previously been. And so it's kind of like a fast travel system. And so it's really interesting to see him incorporate all these ideas, at least at the beginning of the show, because he's extremely powerful from the get-go. But the cool thing about the show is he ends up going to this magic academy very early on in the show, just basically so he can interact with his peers and then up getting a fiance by the end. But he ends up teaching a select group of students basically how to use his type of magic, and while they're not nearly close to his level at first, by the end of the show, and the last episode I saw, they are essentially not quite on par with him, but they are at his close level. They're basically able to take out a lot of these really, what would be strong enemies and strong demon enemies, just without even really thinking about it, and just being super overpowered. And it's really neat to see a show like that, where you have a very overpowered protagonist character, but you have the supporting cast able to match that character and get themselves up to his level, his or her level. And it was something which was very different about the show. I think the show moves a little bit slow with its plot line, and it, again, being a one-cour show, I wish it could have gone a little bit faster, because, I mean, it's at a very more or less exciting point now with the finale, but it feels like it could have done more, I think. I don't know. I haven't read the manga, so I don't know if this is just how it ends up going for whatever reason. But it just seems like they spent at least a couple episodes just on a lot of the politics stuff, and just on just the kids training, and again, a lot of cool magic stuff which happens, but a large majority of it seems like setup for what will potentially be later seasons or the finale, essentially, or things of that sort. That said, besides my critiques, it was a show which I really enjoyed watching, as it was the only, again, isekai show of the season. And so I have become a very big fan of isekai since I started watching anime a year ago. And so, yeah, Wise Man's Grandchild. Check it out. Next show on this list is a feel-good show, which I, again, found myself very much enjoying every Wednesday when I came home to watch it, and that is the Healthful Fox Senko-san, which seems to be going towards a very saddening direction. But I don't know. I haven't read the manga, so I don't know where this is headed. But it seems like it's going towards a very saddening conclusion. But I'll see. But regardless, the main plot of the show focuses on a guy who's very depressed and kind of miserable with his life. He lives alone. He works very long hours at a job that doesn't really appreciate him, makes him just overwork himself. And so as a result, he ends up being bestowed upon him this fox spirit named Senko-san, who's lived for 800 years, and she essentially just helps him with day-to-day activities. She cleans his apartment. She cooks for him. She lets him fluff her tail, and yeah, she's awesome. And then he's eventually encountered by another fox whose name I forget, and it just has this really heartwarming feel to it because while there's not really a huge overarching plot to it, it's a very fun to watch show, and it's really cute to see Senko, who has this really cute foxy personality, in the body of somebody who, again, has lived for 800 years and hasn't really had to exist within the modern day world for a while. So every time she's encountered like new technology or like the supermarket or things which weren't around like 100, 200 years ago, she's just amazed by it and very kind of surprised by it. And it just makes her a very comedic show. And again, very heartwarming show, and one that I really appreciated watching. So yeah, Senko-san, the fox we all need in our lives. Next anime on this list is one which I didn't think was going to be honestly on this list of my favorites of the season when I saw the first episode or two. But as it kept going, it did more to impress me than I really expected it to. And the more I watched it, the more I found myself enjoying it, and the more surprised I was by the concept and just the content in general, and how interesting the show became, and how more engrossed I was in it. And the show is stars on my, and I just really love the show. It's about three young boys who end up angering this Keppo, I think it's Keppo, and they basically turn into these various spirits, and they have to fight off these evil spirit things. I'm blanking on the terms for everything, but it's an interesting show, and they have this musical number when they fight, and in between all of that like supernaturally stuff, it's a show about connections and just again, these main characters discovering kind of the connections that they have as well as the secrets that they have as a result, because there's a lot of unconventional things, and I don't want to say risque, but just things that you don't normally see in anime like this, at least not that I've personally seen, and it does it in a very what's the word and it does it in a very artistic way. As the show goes on, just these connections and these secrets become bigger and bigger, and you see just how various characters are intertwined more and more, and it just becomes this really fascinating show by the end of the season. The season has ended, the show has ended since I'm filming this, because it ended on Thursday, and again, a really satisfying show, a really interesting show to watch, and just the art style even, because there's no real background characters which are anime. A lot of them are just kind of these very bland personas, and it's kind of like a representation of we focus on our main characters, and even just like in our daily lives, we focus on people that we know and we're connected to, while just everyone else is just kind of nothing because we don't really pay attention to those who we're not really interested in. And it makes just for a really interesting and fascinating show, which I just, again, found really good. And I was, again, surprised at just how much I liked it over the course of the 13 episodes, or the 12 episodes that it ran. And yeah, sorry I was on my, check this thing out, it's great. Next show on this list is a supernatural focused show, and so not one that I've seen on a lot of like recommended lists or even best of the year lists, or best of the season list at least, and it's one which really just caught my attention right off the gate. It wasn't the best thing I've ever seen, but it's still been a really interesting show overall, and that's Midnight Occult Civil Servants. The general focus of the show is that it focuses on this organization in Japan which deals with the supernatural. So like angels and demons and spirits and just other supernatural entities which might be causing problems in Japan. And they basically have to deal with them. They're called Anothers, and then recruiting this guy who is able to communicate with them, which is a very, very, very rare ability to do, and he has an ability, essentially, called the Ears of Sand, which, again, allows them to communicate with Anothers and be able to understand kind of why they're doing what they're doing, when generally Anothers are very, well, not trusted. And so it makes for a very interesting show about really not judging things that you don't understand just by appearance alone. You have to try to like communicate and figure out a way to communicate with entities that you aren't familiar with in whatever means you possibly can. Sometimes you can't for whatever reason, and it's just not going to work out. But if there's a way to communicate and kind of have a conversation and figure out a solution without violence, it makes for a much better solution at the end of the day. First episode kind of focuses on this because you get to see what looks to be like a dispute between angels and demons, and they just don't really know why everyone's getting riled up. But as a result of this guy being able to talk and figure out that there's an angel and a demon which are in love with each other, and it's just like these warring families and these warring races, he's able to come up with a solution which does not result in a massive battle, which is a good thing usually. And the show just kind of goes on from that as it deals with more supernatural occurrences. He ends up taking on some spirits and Anothers, which end up kind of sticking with him for one reason or another. And there's a connection with his past, with his ancestor, who seems to have also had relationships with some of the Anothers, which he is now dealing with personally, because they mistake him for his ancestor multiple times throughout the show. And it just has a really interesting tone to it. And even the third to last episode, I think, where you just see different ways that other people in this organization tend to deal with Anothers, where they don't have this ability of the Ears of Sand, and you see them just, you see one person in particular who's just dead set on just exterminating as many of them as he possibly can. And so the episode kind of has a generally happy-go-lucky feel. There's another which is trapping young children in their sleep, so he just wants to play like hide and seek, but if he finds the kids, he ends up trapping them in the stream world and puts them in a coma. And once the guy realizes this, and it's like, oh, this Another just wants a friend to play with, he says that he's going to help him, but as a result, this other guy who's mean traps the Another and just stomps him out, which is a very gut-wrenching and made me pissed off feeling. So it just kind of shows the different ways that people will deal with situations when they don't have all the necessary information. And so it just became one of my favorite shows of the season, and one which I was really glad that I ended up watching and getting into, because again, it just drew me in right from the get-go. This was easily my favorite show of the season for at least the first couple episodes before I started seeing other shows kind of break out. And the next three I talk about are going to be those shows. But yeah, it's a really good show, one that I highly recommend checking out if you have the opportunity. Number 3 is a remake of a 2001 show, I believe, and that's Fruits Basket. Again, I have not seen the original anime. I have not read the manga. I have heard fantastic things about it, but I know nothing about the plot outside of what I've seen in the new version of the anime. And so, don't spoil things downstairs. But it focuses on this young high school girl whose mother has passed away, so she is living very much on her own because she doesn't really have any close family who she feels that she can go and stay with. She is living in the woods in a tent, and she is discovered by some members of the Soma family, and they are essentially people who are able to transform into animals which represent the zodiac. And one of them, which she happens to end up staying with, is the most pretty boy in school. And then she just ends up encountering more and more members of this family and getting more intertwined with them. And kind of like Sarazanmai, it's a show about connections and just how much you make your own family. And you get to see these guys, just these two main male characters, begin to just be more protective and care more and more about this girl as the show continues to go on. And it's just a really heartwarming show to watch. I, again, don't know where it's headed. I hope I don't end up crying my eyes out at some point. But it's supposed to go for like 63 episodes or some random thing like that. And it's a 2-course show, so it's going to be continuing on into summer. But so far, it's one that I've really, really enjoyed. I'm very curious to see all the history of these characters play out, because it alludes to a lot of different things so far, which I just don't know. And with certain characters' past and things which happened in the past. And so I'm very curious to see where this show goes, but as of now, it's a very, very well done show. It's beautifully animated. And again, one of those feel-good shows which I just had a blast coming home to every Friday, to see what ends up happening next to our lovely girl and the Soma family. So, well done. Second to last show on this list is going to be the not really an isekai show, but it takes a lot of isekai shows to make it work, and that is Sakai Quartet. I'll be honest, when the show first debuted, I had only seen Konosuba, and that was one of my favorite shows of all time, anime-wise. And so I'm like, oh, I've seen Konosuba, I can watch this, having no knowledge of Overlord, ReZero, or Saga of Tanya the Evil. And so over the last, I guess, 2 or 3 months, I have ended up watching those shows. And so jumping back into Sakai Quartet about halfway through the season, it's fantastic. I have laughed. I don't know if I've laughed harder in an anime this season or this year thus far, because of how well done these character interactions are. Just, for example, early on you have Aqua from Konosuba going up against Ainz from Overlord, because they're all demons and she is a goddess, supposedly. And so she has her idea that she needs to exterminate all these demons because she doesn't want to be associated with them or be in the same class as them and things of that sort. And you just see Kazuma just knock her on the head, just nonchalantly, like he always does, because she acts like a mean person and he just talks her down, and it's hilarious. And you also get to see the main characters from Konosuba and ReZero interact, because they both kind of are in the same boat. One was reincarnated into another world, one was transported. You get to see Tanya, who is very much against being X, who is actually God in her show, and you have Aqua being a self-proclaimed goddess, and so you have tensions among them, which end up being hilarious to see play out later on in the show. And it's just so well done. And again, it captures the chemistry and the cast characteristics of all 4 of these shows fantastically. And I wish the show was longer, because each episode is roughly 10 to 12 minutes, and so it just ends super quickly, which is a shame, because it's just hilarious for those 10 minutes. So I'm very curious to see how the show ends up ending on Monday, because it seems like it's leading towards a conclusion, which would make sense, but at the same time, if they want to do a second season of this, which I think the show is fairly popular, because I have seen nothing but praise for it, and I think it's amazing. I don't know if they would do a second season with the same cast, or what they would end up doing, because you would assume that they will all end up going back to their respective worlds by the end of the show. And if they don't, you would think they would be set up for season 2. And if they don't do the same cast, they have numerous ways to do it with other isekai shows like Slime, Shield Hero, Demon Lord, and I don't know, something else. And it would just be really fun to see that stuff on screen and see different combinations, maybe bring some of the characters from an old season into the show. But overall, the show is just, again, fantastic. If you have watched all 4 of these shows, that's the best way to experience it. And so it is a little bit limiting in that sense, because I honestly probably would not have even touched this thing if I had not taken the time to watch, again, all 4 of these shows, Konosuba, Re:Zero, Overlord, and Saga of Time and Evil, which are great shows in and of themselves for various reasons. But it is a little bit limiting in that sense. But if you take the time to do it, again, they're fantastic. And so I highly recommend checking out Sakai Quartet, or at least taking the time to get yourself acquainted with the shows which envelop it. Last show on this list is easily my favorite show of the season. It's a 2-core show, so it's kind of like Shield Hero was last season. But it's Demon Slayer. It's easily the best show of the season thus far in regards to how well it's paced, how interesting the plot and the characters are, and just the art style in general. It's just fantastic. I will say it starts out a little bit slow, because it did honestly take me a couple episodes to really get invested in it and really start to appreciate it. But once you see our main character go from kind of a wuss to a badass, it's so satisfying to watch, because you get to see just how much he progresses in such, well, in the show, a long period of time, but in such a short period of time. Because the show starts out with this young boy who goes down to a neighboring village to sell some coal. He comes back and he finds his family slaughtered by demons, and one survivor ends up being his sister, Nezuko. And so he's trying to rush her to the neighboring village to try to save her life. Turns out she's been turned into a demon. She attacks him, tries to kill him, and he runs into a demon hunter, who ends up trying to kill Nezuko. And he is convinced, oh hey, I can make it so she doesn't try to kill me. And obviously he somehow creates that situation. And ends up being recruited as a demon slayer as a result, and carries his sister around in a box on his back to help him fight other demons. And so you would think that being muzzled, Nezuko wouldn't have the most personality, but I would argue she has probably the most personality of any of the characters, honestly. And that's saying something, because just her expressions on the show and just how innocent she seems at times, despite being a demon, it's just hysterical, because the main character will be having these serious conversations, learning about the main villain of the show and other demons and things of that sort, and she'll just be rolling on the ground, just innocent, not paying attention, and it's just hilarious, and I love her character so much. The fighting stuff is awesome too, because each attack has kind of like an elemental tribute to it, or form to it, because our main character, he uses like this water style. We have another character which uses a lightning style, one that uses a beast style, and you get to see just these various elements and techniques come into play, and we're seeing more of them nowadays with more characters being introduced. And just the way that these attacks are animated, it just makes it look so much more artistic and so much more visually appealing to watch on screen, because it's just done in such a very interesting way, and not a way that I personally have seen done before. Because like when he does a water style attack, you see just these Japanese style waves being done on screen, just kind of going in the motion of his sword strikes, and so it just kind of adds that visual appeal to it. And then the various demons are also very well done too, because you get to just see how different each one is in regards to like its fighting ability, or if they're kind of a low level demon as opposed to like something which has consciousness and has certain special abilities and techniques and actually puts up a good fight. You see one that kind of can go into this dark space underground and kind of pop up wherever he wants to. You have another one which can control balls with invisible wires and arrows and things of that sort. And it just makes for very unique and satisfying combat. You have another person which can bang drums on his chest and it caused a room that he's controlling to turn around or cause bear strikes to end up out of nowhere. And it just makes it makes every battle have its own aspect to it and its own uniqueness, and it makes the show each week pretty much like the favorite thing of mine to watch, because it just packs a lot into 24 minutes, and you always wish the show was longer as a result, because it seems to just fly by super quickly, and so it's super well paced. And I'm really curious to see what it ends up doing with the second half of the season. And so, yeah, Demon Slayer. If you haven't checked this thing out, you're missing out, because it is fucking fantastic. And so, yeah, those are my favorite shows of spring 2019. Yeah, I really enjoy them. I might make a favorite or a first impressions for summer 2019. I don't know. I'll see. Yeah, let me know your favorite anime of the spring 2019 season in the comments down below. I would love to hear it and discuss it with you. If it's any of the shows that I watched which didn't make this list, also let me know, and we can talk about why they may or may not be good. Also, let me know your picks for the summer 2019 season, anything that you've seen which might be interesting or that's being adapted from a manga that you've already read that I should make sure to check out. There's already a number of shows which I'm going to be watching, which I know about, but you might know something that I don't, so yeah, let me know. We got through about half a bottle in this video. As always, make sure to like, favorite, comment, and subscribe if you so choose. I appreciate it immensely. Make sure to check out any of the recent movie reviews that I've done as well. I did one for Toy Story 4 and Child's Play this weekend, so go check those out. One's doing significantly better view-wise than the other. And as always, people, my name is Nick Pell, and once again, keep on watching.